am going to make a video responding to Tessa's challenge. Specifically the one issued to me, basically revisiting my top 15 dream roles and talking about any changes that may have occurred. So I went back and watched it. It was 6 years ago, back in 2017, which gives me a lot of feelings for a variety of reasons. And I didn't watch the whole thing, I just kind of skimmed through to remind myself what parts I put on there. Considering this was, once again, 6 years ago. And there have been a few changes to it, although in this case it's not because I've played any of these roles. Between the time when I posted that video back in 2017 and now, I have been in a grand total of 2 shows, both of which I mentioned at the beginning of this month. So obviously neither of those shows are the shows that were on the list from that video. So the reasons that they aren't on here are due to a variety of other factors. First and foremost, I would get rid of Mayor Shin from my previous list. This is partly because my general opinion toward Music Man has changed ever so slightly. Music Man was one of those shows that was written quite some time ago, and as such, it has a fair set of problems. It's certainly not as bad as some of the other shows that were written during that time period, but that doesn't excuse the problems that it does have. Also, I feel like Past Jeffrey was just wanting to have 15 parts because, you know, they saw 15 as this nice round number, and so they just kind of picked a character that they thought sounded fun to play. And don't get me wrong, if I ever did end up auditioning for Music Man and got offered the part of Mayor Shin, I would still enjoy playing it, but I think counting it as a dream role is taking it a little too far. The other part that I would ultimately remove, and this one I'm a little more sad about, is Dickon. So 6 years ago when I talked about this, I did very specifically mention even then that I was considering not including it on the list because I felt that I was getting a little too old to play the part. Because while Dickon in the original Broadway was played by someone who was in his early 20s, he could pretty easily pull off still being a teenager. Because while he's clearly a little older in the musical than he is in the book, he's still pretty clearly supposed to be a child, just a teenager instead. And while there are some shows where adults play kids, 2 of the ones that are still on my top 3 are shows that do that, Secret Garden is not one of them that works doing that. I might make a separate video about this later, I don't know yet, because I would have to actually put more thoughts in order. But Secret Garden is just a different show from those other shows, so it wouldn't work as well to have adults playing the children. You really need child actors to be playing those roles. And while I may have been able to pull that off 6 years ago when I was 26, I am currently in my 30s, and I think that ship has sailed. So with 2 spots officially gone, does that mean that I have 2 spots to fill it? Well, coincidentally, yes. In fact, I do. Now, I'm not going to try to place them among the original list. The original list was kind of arbitrary, other than the top 3, which haven't changed. The top 3 very much continue to be number 3, Hysterium from Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, number 2, Snoopy from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and number 1, Leaf Coney Bear from 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And if you're at all curious about the rest of my list, I will go ahead and include a link to that video in the video itself. I think it's over there. We'll find out if I'm right. And then also in the description down below, in the doobly-doo down below. So there are 2 parts that I would now add to that list that I didn't know about back then because I hadn't listened to these musicals or the musicals just hadn't existed yet. So the first character that I'm going to talk about is Claude from Come From Away. I absolutely love Come From Away. I think it is a fantastic and beautiful musical, and if you haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend doing so. The basic premise is the musical takes place in the small town of Gander, Newfoundland. It takes place on September 11th, 2001, and deals with the aftermath of the 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. And specifically how this small town of Gander ended up accepting hundreds of people who were no longer able to fly due to those attacks. It's just a really heartwarming tale about how this town opened themselves up to these vast group of people, and all about just accepting others for who they are, and a lot of other things that I'm not going to get into here because this isn't a review of that musical, but seriously, I would highly advise checking this musical out. Claude is the mayor of Gander. And honestly, he's a much better mayor than Mayor Shin in more ways than one. I think just ultimately he's an overall better written character. And I remember when I first listened to this musical Claude was the character that I wanted to play. The second character that I'm going to add, and this probably isn't going to come as a surprise to anybody, especially anybody who watched me last year, is Mr. D from the Lightning Thief musical. I have always enjoyed the character of Mr. D, even when I first read the original series, and I think this musical does a very good job of transferring that character to the stage. And of course, I really enjoy his song. That's why I sang it on this channel last year. I know in the original cast, Mr. D was double cast, so the actor who played him also played Grover. And I would absolutely be ecstatic to play Grover as well, but if I had to only choose one character from this show, it would be Mr. D. So yeah, not much has changed, honestly. 2 characters removed and 2 characters added to fill in those roles that are now left. And so, to my friends and fellow VEDSies, I will see all of you